Hello, I am Chris from Airwindows, and we're going to do a coding stream after I get my coffee and stuff. And beyond that, no, I'm not rightly sure. Let me see. I have a thing to test out here. All these computers everywhere. Who knows? There we go. Hey. Alrighty then. So all I need to do is sort of swivel this over a little bit so I can see it better. And go and get my coffee because my coffee is ready. And we'll begin coding something, and I'll tell you what I'm going to code in just a minute. Alrighty, I'm back. So one of the things I have set up here that I should probably test is making sure that I can make sounds here. So as always, all of our sounds are always about alien kittens, right? So let's demo that a little bit. Yep. So you're only getting that in mono, but that's fine. And I'm going to call that good enough. Let's start doing a coding stream. I may or may not decide to boop this over to the actual, I'm not sure. Oh no, it's tickling my nose. I'm not sure whether we're going to do this fancy chroma keying thing. The reason I've got this set up is, here, let me show you. There's something else. Long as nobody's here yet. Let's get funky with some cables, shall we? We have not entirely funkified the cables, but we are going to... well, before I do that, here's something. You know how this is the studio view? See that camera there? It is not plugged in. Okay, so never mind. Hey, Razfan, also I have to update all of my text. Bear with me, we're doing all kinds of things today. It's all good for some value of good. Here is the thing. If I can plug this in, scooch it under here. I know I'm off mic. I don't have the I got the laugh today. So, hello. And while I'm doing this, let me bounce over here. And update things. We are not music making in Reaper and Nerdseek today. So I'm going to want to update that. And I'm also going to want to update the category because it's not a music category. Complete moot point as to what I call it on Twitch. Twitch is never going to work for me. How about I search for dev instead? Okay, that's not working as well as I'd like, but okay. Software and game development. There we go. Got there. Got there. Now, the Airwindows, same deal. No. What did I call the other one? I can't remember. Just a minute. Okay, I called it Texturize. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do Texturize. I'll tell you what that means in a moment. It has been an interesting couple of days, let me tell you. Where are we at? Okay, good enough. Good enough, that's a start. So those are updated. And here, I wanted to show you some things. Oh, interesting. It's semi-transparent. How's that happening? So what I wanted to show you was something. Let's open it. Oh my God, I am so buried in, I've got so many mice and keyboards around me, it's not even funny. Horrifying. It's horrifying. Okay. Bear with me. Touch ID. Boop. So, see how we have this? This is, oh no, honey, no. You're looking at the wrong place. Oh my God, what am I even doing and where? Okay, so this mouse I don't need any longer because that's my tracky thing. And this mouse is the one that I'm streaming on. Fine, fine. We're doing great so far. And this is our initial coding computer. But look at this. That did not go as expected. Let's try to set this up better, okay? Give me a second. Hi, there I am. Now this should have overridden what I was doing elsewhere. So I can appear in the corner of any of these windows, including this one. And here's where we're going to do our initial coding. And then when it is time to actually go to the compiling the signed versions, check it out. We have the newer machine, and that can also be part of our system. So old, new, old, new. Just like that. And so basically I can use the color LCD just fine, but it's going to need to pad it a little bit on the edge, which it seems happy to do. It's better resolution than I've ever given you on the antique laptop. And then when it's time to do the other one, voila, we can go in and do that. Note that we've got some other stuff showing up here, in that I have a thing there that says JetBrains Rider DMG, and I'll tell you what that's about. But first, I'm going to go back in here and get ready to kind of start up. In fact, I'll even unplug the because we're probably not going to get all the way to that coding, but here's the thing, okay? Like my situation as far as Airwindows and being a coder and doing all of this kind of stuff is this is what I do, but I may also have a need to get my butt to Canada because I am seeing somebody in Canada. And there are some challenges with that concept, namely, they won't necessarily let you come in. You need to be doing something, as in having employment. Now, nobody employs open source plugin coders like what I'm doing today. This is not a job. This is like me doing a thing. And you don't get somebody else hiring you for that because it's basically I would be the one hiding. Hey, Drumpf, hiring for that. But sometimes there's stuff that you do which does qualify for doing things. In particular, I'm fairly close to Montreal, Quebec. If you watched a recent video by H Bomber Guy on a video game, I forget exactly what the one was, but it's one of the video games that he reviews. His most recent video, he's talking about development in Canada, and he points out companies that are based in Montreal, and it is because Montreal heavily subsidizes the salaries of programmers you employ. So it's like everybody is in Montreal now. Montreal is providing enormous investment in, oh, Grabule, you're in Montreal? Interesting. Interesting. Do you know anybody? But anyway, point being, I did this silly LinkedIn thing where it's like trying to find out your skill assessments. And as it happens, LinkedIn thinks that I'm good at C, C++, Photoshop for some reason. I haven't used that in more than a decade. HTML, but not CSS, but HTML. And Unity, because I did Counterpart in Unity. So on the back of that, this morning, I scrambled around and got the most recent version of Unity, the one that will run on Apple Silicon. And I am going to refamiliarize myself with it and possibly reimagine Counterpart if I can get it working, which is, it's many, hey, easy Kibby, it is many versions old by now. I must have done that like 10 years ago or more. But I might reimagine Counterpart for the purpose of doing it and brushing up on Unity because, like I said, LinkedIn thinks I'm qualified. I'm going to have headhunters hunting me down for doing game dev. And, you know, the funny thing is that is a much better fit for who I am and what I do than any number of, like, I don't know, front-end dev, HTML, website builders, and stuff like that. That's all well and good, but is not really where my strengths are. I was not passing LinkedIn quizzes on what those things were. It's not like a beneath me thing. It's an entirely different set. But as far as the Unity dev, and Unity is a pretty fundamental game engine for, I don't know, shall we say, getting jobs in. So I'm going to be looking into that. Now, it's not necessarily going to be open source because I don't think that world runs on open source particularly. But I'm going to be looking into whether I can get example working, functioning games and things, or stuff that I've built in Unity to work, and that might be interesting. However, for now, we're not doing that today. What we're doing today is building a plugin, because of course we are. But how are we going to build this plugin? We're going to do a hybrid between a couple of different plugins, because there's something out there, the company MAAT, M-A-A-T, has put out a funny sort of thing, which is a magical woo-woo sound betterizer. And it's all about adding noise to sound in such a way that it's kind of masked beneath tones, and it's almost like vocoded noise. And the deal is, I've got stuff like that. Here, I'll show you. So you're paying $99 to get the MAAT thing, and people are all up in arms about how it was a very strange thing to be doing. Well, I have something like that, but theirs does not allow a wet dry. However, if I have this sitting in here, if I don't, I know where I can get it. I have the code anyway. Okay, I guess I don't have it installed, but I do know where I can get it. Check this out. Here's the list of the plugins. I must say I'm happy with the streaming better so that you can see, you can read this a little bit better. That is a upgrade. So, I have a plugin called Silhouette. Do I have it listed in here? That's a good question. Huh. Okay, seemingly not. Let's amend that. How about? If I, well, geez, if I don't have silhouette as one of the things that I've done, it's time that I added it, because I've been telling people that I have it and it is similar to this thing. Let's go and make that then. And I've also got a plugin called Voice of the Starship, and that is going to become relevant too. But here, library. I didn't realize I didn't have that out. I thought I had that out. Let's build it in place. It might not compile the first time. No, it's looking good. Looking good. Succeeded. Okay, so I did not have that before, but now I do. And I'll leave this open because it will become relevant. Let's launch this again. Open the recent thing. Now let's go and use it. IO units. Airwindows. Silhouette under S. There it is. See, I can't believe I didn't have this. Note that this is one of my featureless ones. Check this out. It doesn't let you hear the sound at all, but it provides a background noise, which gives you a sense of how dynamic the sound is. Now, if I had a dry wet on this, it would be maybe not so, but kind of similar to what this matte thing is, but they have a much more complicated thing going on, where you have a lot of different ways to color this sound. That's not what this is, but this gives you that percussive effect where you can use it to kind of heighten stuff, but it's not a constant blast of noise. It's kind of riding underneath the sound, and it's taking on the color of whatever it is that you're using. The matte thing has multiple models. I'm not going to be cloning it, but what I am going to be doing is doing an Airwindows thing called Texturize, which is kind of like that. And I should be able to do Voice of the Starship as well. And I could show you that too. Let's leave that on for the time being. I no longer need to have that hiding out of the way, so that's fine where it is. And we go back in here and open the same thing up again. This will be even less relevant as to what I loaded, but Airwindows Voice of the Starship. See, now that's a darker sound. We've got it interacting with filter, but here, check this out, algorithm. We got a deep subsonic thing going on here. Now, how this works, how Voice of the Starship makes its noise, is it's using some kind of funky algorithm, but part of it is determining in the use of a random walk, which is what some of this stuff is. It's also going to check every number of samples whether it needs to make the resulting random walk go towards the center of the waveform or not. And the more often you take a sample and just go, okay, you automatically go, it's no longer as random, instead you are automatically walking towards the center of the waveform, you're walking towards 0, you get this. If it's all towards the center, it's still a random walk, but you're losing all of that low frequency stuff because it is returning to 0 far more often. It's barely doing the big wanders that are causing low frequency departures. So it stops acting as much like a random walk and starts acting like a more high frequency thing. And it gets darker and darker. Until you can see on the waveform there, those are huge DC offsets sneaking in there. The biggest one, large amount across of DC, whereas the higher you get, you're not going to have any DC offset because it simply won't be able to wander as far away from the center part. So what do we do to make Silhouette act like that and also act like the matte thing? And then we'll call ours Texturize, because it's not going to be the matte thing. It's going to be something else that incorporates some techniques that people wanted, like dry wet, out of the matte thing. We do our centering motion based on 0 crossings. Because what that means is on stuff with lots of low frequencies, you're going to get more low frequency rumble, which will blend with the sound that you've got. Stuff with high frequencies, where it's doing a lot more 0 crossings, it's going to tend to resist that more. And there will be, it's never going to be a particularly localized kind of thing. But we should be able to do something with this anyhow. And here is how we're going to start. New project. It's not going to be a stereo effect in the AU world. And we're going to call it Texturize rather than anything related to what Matt's thing was. I don't actually even remember what they call it, other than they've got a secret sauce kind of thing and a bunch of sort of snake oily noise around it. And people were very cranky about that stuff, although honestly, you gotta just, they're existing in a world that I can kind of relate to the challenges of existing that way. You kind of just do what you can as far as functioning within that world. But let's get something compiling and working. We have much better ability to read things on the screen now. So our comp subtype is going to be text. That is the plugin ID. It's also going to be the plugin ID for the VST version. And we're going to start by getting Silhouette up and running in this way. Like we were able to compile and run it. So what we're going to do is same deal, but we're going to leave all of those, and let's call them doubles as well. I don't honestly know why Apple needs to use float64 in this way. But in the VST, we're going to be using double anyhow, so I don't think there's any harm done in doing that. All of my stuff in the recent recompile switched over to using just C-style doubles. And it might not even make sense how we're doing that, but we'll see. I will quickly find out whether I can compile this and make it work. We're going to have all of the parameters, because we're going to be dialing stuff in using these before cutting it down to what we actually need. They go from 0 to 1, which is like the VST. If you like this kind of stuff, I'm going to be doing this for the next 3 days. And again, like I said, I've now got my system set up so that I could be also doing coding on the more recent laptop. This is an antique. This is my legacy coding for older audio processors. But I'll be able to do the same thing on the more recent laptop. And that means I could be fooling around with Unity coding as well. And that might be even more interesting for people. Or not, but I got to tell you, what's not to like about, hey, we're coding games, yay. So, reset means we initialize these values. It's very important because if we don't do that, then you can run into weird problems because it could be anything. It could be like a ham sandwich. And the first time it tries to use last sample, it's like, oh, hi, ham sandwich. Are you an audio value? Guess what? We're blowing up the converters that way because it is a near infinite loudness number, and who knows what might happen there. So we need to zero them out when we reset. And then this is going to be very tiny indeed. We're going to start by making it exactly what it was and go from there. We've defined input samples. Oh, hello, we have not updated all of this, have we? We don't use long doubles anymore. I haven't updated that yet. I will. Pretty sure I did the VSTs, but I have not done the... Honestly, I have had great difficulty making templates work in Xcode. So it's one of the things that I just kind of leave alone. And we've got some other stuff here that also needs doing. But for now, we're going to copy this and see whether we can't replace this code in the middle. And get something that works. And before we even do anything else, we're going to fix this rand double rand max because we've got a random value that we can use. Now we've got also an increment in that, but tell you what, let's open something recent that might or might not I'm trying to remember what I've got that, oh, I know one thing that I've got that uses it. So Airwindows, plugins, Mac AU, Deckreca. Deckreca is the canonical example of stuff that I had to update because it was calling rand a million times. And we don't like that. So what you actually do in modern Airwindows parlance is use this. So we'll just copy that. And this is what we use instead of the under said. We don't call rand. On Linux, that can block a thread. But we do have to increment this between uses. So we use this to do that. And we're probably not even going to stick with this, but for the time being, this is going to be just fine. We're going to get it so that it works. We're going to compile it and run it and make the same sound that we did before, except we could probably use the dry wet like right from the get-go. So let's see about including that too. And we won't need Silhouette open anymore. But what does have a good dry wet? Recent projects. Let's open like Edge or Dirt or something. Those are recent. I just put out Dirt just recently. So this is similar to what we're going to use, except for without the outpad stuff. And we're defining wet as param10. It's going to go from 0 to 1. I do know, however, that we're going to be exaggerating it greatly. So, and I'll tell you what that means. We're going to want to have that noise be very, 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 very faint over most of the travel of that, which is why I'm doing the pow function, why I'm multiplying it by itself 4 times. And that is not called every sample, that is only called every buffer, so we can get away with using it. It's a simple way of defining what's happening, and it's somewhat more accurate doing it that way. That said, if anybody is really fussing about that, I do know a way that I can do the same thing. So let's see now. Try sample. And we don't need dirt open. And it probably won't build first of all. Nope. See? 87 errors. And a compile ain't one. And I'll tell you why a compile ain't one. Because this is having to do with the way that this compiles the first time. For whatever reason, it tried to do that before compiling its own libraries. So I do it the second time, and it's fine, except for that it is not using some of these things. We can absolutely take that away. Don't even know why it's there. We're using all of these to do something with, and so now we can build it and there will be no errors. Now let's go and see what we got. We're going to see how that gets, because it's kind of like a grain sort of thing in the sense that it will make a tonality, and we're going to work on getting the tonality to be something interesting, because this is targeting recent developments in the plugin software world where folks are doing a certain thing. Like the company Matt is making a hang on. Of course we're opening up Alien Kittens, because of course we are. And Airwindows. Texturize. None of these do anything, but dry wet will. And there you have it. Silhouette with the dry wet control. And we've got it about the right level too, honestly. But the tonality, not so much. So we should have it not being as intense. But the one thing about this is that it is providing that high frequency pulsiness due to the code. Oh, what was I going to say about Matt? I was going to say that's, they have put out a plugin recently, which is a reissue of something earlier, and it's something that a bunch of old school sound engineers found as an amazing sort of silver bullet secret weapon thing that works in somewhat similar characteristics, qualities. It's a magical sound betterizer. And the way that it works is they have sort of targeted noise being brought in to color stuff. And here's the deal, is I believe I can do something in the same general area without actually being the same thing. Matt is charging $99 for theirs, and I am going to have mine be free, of course. And it is also not going to be a clone of Matt's thing, nor do I intend to have it be exactly the same. But I wanted to serve a similar function, and that means I need to have it do sounds and noises and such. For instance, let's open up Voice of the Starship, because I know I'm going to need to incorporate something relating to that. Here's the mechanism for cutting back subsonics. So what do we need for... I don't know how many of these I'm going to need, but some of it is literally a filter, and some of it is the raw noise source. I could also open up noise and see if that's closer to where I'm going to want to end up on my poor little antique laptop. This is probably more like my general, so high, low shape decay. Alrighty, that's not much simpler. VOTS is probably going to be fine. Let's also see what it looks like. So this accumulator stuff is clearly a moving average filter, which is fine. That's fine. And this is the basic concept behind Voice of the Starship. So what we're going to do is just go to Voice of the Starship. That was earlier. And again, I can put that on as a sort of background noise. We'll do a sort of low quality noise so it doesn't eat the computer too hard. So here is something vaguely like what we're going to be doing, except for this is designed as like straight up spaceship background noise. In fact, I've got it set up so that if you filter it, it goes completely bright. And this is without use of a biquad filter, by the way. This is before I was doing biquad filters, so what's going on here is distinct, and we're not going to exactly duplicate it. But what we're going to do, firstly, is put this off to the side. So we're going to get sort of the guts of this code out. Low cut and decut. So I think what I'm going to want to do is look at literally what the noise process is, and this is a very crude pre-modern noise generator. So this thing that has quadratic, we're not paying attention to it. However, yeah, bear with me. I'm thinking about how this works. So we have got a oscillating thing where it's adding and subtracting random numbers. It's adding and subtracting random amounts, except for that we can compel it to go towards the center if we have a zero cross. But in this case, it's not actually doing that. It is going to do it based on the sheer frequency of, like it's doing our random frequencies, and then it's doing this decut and low cut. Those are assigned to numbers. If the numbers are high, then it's going to be that much less likely that this value quadratic is going, it's a countdown, in other words. This is doing a countdown, and every time it counts down to nothing, it tracks flip and forces it to go towards center. So we need noise A, and we need flip. Bool flip. And we're probably never going to need last sample and out sample, except for we are going to need last sample. And I'll tell you why. Because we're going to want to at least average that. And we can check a slew rate for that. Changing the order of those doesn't make any difference, except for that I'm going to want to use that somewhere. So we're going to want to initialize those things. Rue the day that you started using flip. And then at the very end of doing this stuff, because we're going to do it here, flip gets flipped over every sample. It's one of those interleave things where it swaps over. Now, back into VOTS. Here's the guts of the random walk. We're not going to call it noise A, but this is going to give us a random walk. Now, one thing that's going to happen is if I do this, it's immediately going to start doing a DC random walk. I could even demonstrate that. There's not a lot of percentage doing that, though. But what we could do is go in here again and this is the guts of how we make that work. I'm wanting to do a frequency-based thing rather than immediately going straight over to my zero cross-based thing. I shouldn't need to bracket these either. It's a very simple thing. So we got n sample frames in here, and it's counting down to 0. So basically, well, I mean, the thing about it is, I remember these things because they're just how this stuff works. Like, I'm working out how the things work. So understanding the basic concept of how the thing is being made to work tells you the answer there. There are a lot of things like how programs interfaces work that I'll completely lose, especially if they're being done in some awkward and inconvenient way. I'm just glancing over at this to see how silhouette functions. Silhouette plus out sample. Okay, I'm going to be able to reuse some of these things, but for now, maybe not so much. So this is the guts of the random walk, and this is the part that compels it to return to center. So right now we're generating the noise and we're assigning it with the dry wet, and it's going to be random except for we're checking once every buffer and compelling it to return to center. That's common enough, it's often enough, that it should keep it from doing a massive DC walk. I don't know how much it's going to step on the high frequencies. But there's another plugin that I've got, and that was all I needed from Voice of the Starship too. Restart that. Using our alien kittens. And then, now let's see what we got. Because it's no longer going to have quite the same tone as it had. Instead, it's going to be a raw noise without fluctuation. And it is wandering into DC properties. So it ain't doing that nearly often enough. What can we do to modify that? You know what? Let's just put in the thing that I was looking for. That might just be satisfactory. I can put in a bailout if it turns out that it is wrong. If you're following me, here's the next bit I need to add. Tremolo square is my square wave tremolo, just on and off, but it will only switch on 0 crossings, and that's what we need to find. So let's just start by taking that verbatim. We don't know whether we need all of it, but we're going to need last sample, and we'll turn it to So we got os, polarity, and mute. And we're going to open Texturize back up, but also open Tremolo Square up and make a little space in case we need to delete some of these things. And here is the Tremolo Square guts. So our oscillator we're not going to need, but this bit we're going to need verbatim. And let's see. And that is going to track our zero crosses, just like that. This is a very small plugin. We don't need this, because we're not actually muting, we're just controlling something else. And we're not particularly worried about Texturize, but we're going to need to check whether or not our polarity is flipping. And we're going to nest some of this stuff, because every time it crosses we need to do this. We're going to force flip to whatever is most relevant. So and the reason we have brackets here is because we have this whole if statement that we're going to be sticking in here. We're no longer caring about what unsample frame says or anything like that, but this bit needs to be put in everywhere this is. In fact, we could even stick it in like that because it's fairly short. And that checks each switch. And pretty much the reason I have to enclose this in the brackets is because of the semicolon here. Like if it was just this, I could kind of nest it. That counts as one statement. But the else is counting as a separate statement, so that needs to be enclosed in here. Let's piss people off who like tidy coding practices and make it take up less space. People have very specific ideas as to how code is supposed to look. We're kind of ignoring that. But that is the code. I basically only need to follow the polarity. And we're tracking noise, but this stuff here which we're actually using, but we're not actually needing. It has no effect on what we're doing underneath. But this is where I got that noise fluctuation thing going on, where we generated a like we're doing cosine here. Could probably also do arcsine. And what that's doing is we're leaning out the audio, and then we are generating our noise, and then we're multiplying it by the absolute value of our audio. And then we're updating it. We're doing another one. Smoother is another noise. Smoother is -1 to 1. So one thing we can do is simplify this code. Or sort of localize this code, as it were. So that means we're generating noise that is -1 to 1. It's centered on 0. It may or may not be necessary for what we're doing. And we don't necessarily really need to scale it because that's just something that I was doing back in the day. But this is relevant. And I can look up recent versions of console for a code that will expand outwards, and then I can contract afterwards with this. We have a kind of, we're doing a kind of TPDF here. This is 2 noise sources. They were originally rand. And they're smoothing out adjacent samples with the samples coming in, which is maybe not as relevant as we would care to have it be, but we do end up getting a TPDF-like behavior through this. And then after we've expanded out the volume level, we've added the noise, we've multiplied the noise by our initial signal coming in, and then we sign it, meaning that the noise samples are going to tend to be more on the outside edge. So this is just shaping the distribution of the random values. And this stuff is all going to be kind of ignored, but what we're going to do right now is find out whether we have made it so that it tracks what we need it to track. So we can probably get rid of tremolo square. Because if this don't work, we'll figure out something else. But this might just work. It'd be rather nice if it worked first go. There's some other things I have in mind. But for now, let's see if we have a functioning thing or whether it's not as functioning as that. Okay, it's not doing DC. Oh yes, it is. It's too loud. So we're going to cut it down. And what we can do to make that happen is, well, hang on a second. Let's move this over to where we use it. Because these things are in the we don't use this category, I believe. But these things are. Same deal here. That was not so bad, though. That was getting into the zone. And yeah, we are not using those because we just commented that stuff out. But we've got a available variable that we can immediately use to pad things. So let's do that. That will tell us, actually, hang on. We can keep that line of code the way it will be in the final one, but add just another one and we get to scale it back now. Let's build it again and go. Because I want to hear what this gives me. And again, the 9 warnings, components, and we do not have it scaled to the input sound, but we should have a blast of sound that fluctuates. Oh, I'm glad it's readable. That's the idea. I keep evolving things. As you know, I'm constantly evolving everything. This is not only readable, but we should be able to use it for the newer laptop too. And did I build the new one? Let's just build it again, because we can. Now I should be able to scale the result and that'll act a little bit like this. So there's our noise. It should be fluctuating based on the zero crossings. That said, it's very uniform. It's not fluctuating quite the way that I'd thought. I kind of feel like I'm hearing a distinction, but this is not happening nearly as often as I thought it was going to. So what I think needs to happen is I got to space it out. This noise is too high frequency. It needs to be going to lower frequencies when bassy sound is happening. So I've got to get it to fluctuate a little bit more. Now, how are we going to do that? With another comparison. I'm trying to think of what I would name this variable. Countdown comes to mind. Seems kind of lame though. Count up. Because what's going to happen is each time we do a zero crossing, we increment or decrement something. Decrement is good. And then if it is beyond a certain point, then we do the forced override of the variable. That's how that needs to work. So, let's just call it count. Why not? So now this is decoupled from that, and count is incrementing. And if count is larger than threshold and threshold is 1, this is going to give us a whole different behavior. It's not float though, we want an int. If we're casting it to an int explicitly, we do this. So we're multiplying param 8, which is going to return a float of some kind, by a double position number. If we call this f, it would be a float, and I think L would be a long, but without that, it's just automatically a double. And we haven't gotten into fluctuating the amplitude of the noise yet. What I want to do is hear the tonal changes in the noise on top of Alien Kittens. And it's not going to be large, but I should be able to get at least something out of that. I want it to go to a lower sound. So here's some more of our settings and things that we can use. And then I have to define count. So that's going to be in the H file. And we should be able to build. Oh, won't build with that. I changed it out from under that. Warnings do not matter in this case. We're about to fluctuate. We're about to fluctuate the noise in a minute. I want to do the tonal thing first. Interesting thing about this is that it will dynamically adapt to sample rate, so I shouldn't have to alter that by sample rate. If the zero crossing is 1,000 samples, and then at a high sample rate it's 4,000 samples, it should just naturally start doing the right thing. So, background noise. Funny, I'm not hearing much of a difference there. What's up with that? I'm supposed to be hearing a difference. I clearly am missing something, so let's see. So in threshold is this cast to int. I suppose I can just not explicitly cast it, but that shouldn't be changing a thing. This will work fine regardless. Threshold of 100. Maybe that's not enough. And then if count is larger than threshold, we do this and then reset count to 0. Count starts as 0, so far so good. And that is when we do the if, and we're not disabling this completely because
if we were, we'd start getting that DC runaway again. So here's where we increment. We have to have this else because it switches polarity each time. We don't have to update count each time. So let's not do the extra if. All that matters here is that we do the polarity true. So if input sample is less than 0 and polarity is true, then count plus plus and polarity is false. Either you just automatically put it true. This should still do the thing. So the question is, can we increase threshold until we start hearing an effect? Let's add a lot of numbers there and see where we get. I just added orders of magnitude because I wasn't getting any play out of what I was doing. Now this should still be tied to the audio that we have. It should be functioning along those lines. I don't know whether we could magnify it in some way, make it more exaggerated. It would be good if we did, but I'm not sure that's possible. And then this has to go right back to 0 again. There we go. We are missing something in my estimation of how this works. We really should be getting a different sound out of this. I made it go orders of magnitude. It's supposed to be updating so rarely that it's no longer having the centering force, but it is obviously having that centering force. Here's our level, that's fine. Could it be just that we are at such a high level that put that back and we will do it manually. So we're now comparing against a floating point number that is very large. And this is the only place where we're centering that force. And if we don't do this, then it really should... let's see if this works. I might have a simpler issue. Might be just not doing what I thought. In which case I might have to scale that back. Back into here. To 0. It's acting like it's not doing a damn thing. That is somewhat concerning. I need it to be doing the thing. So here's what we're doing. We've got this value, it's count. It's starting at 0 and it's going up to a larger number, and when it gets up to the larger number, which is checked here, if it's beyond that number, and it's being incremented here, it's being incremented at every zero crossing, then we're forcing flip to the correct thing. So one thing we could do no longer do that. Will it still work, or will we start getting the DC offset that I'm expecting? If so, there's your problem. And it does seem to be correctly constructed. We shall see, though. I might be off by scaling issues, or it could be a more simple concern that I'm not spotting. Now, are we going to wander? Looks like we're not wandering. That's interesting. Oh, hard luck for your friend, Stanstees. That's unfortunate. So let's get back to what we need to do in order to make the random walk flip equals negative flip. Or not flip, rather. What do we need to do to get our random walk back? Well, for one, let's do this. It's just a raw source from this one. This should be giving me a interleaved random add that should make it wander rather than just being a continuous thing. There's even more warnings than before, but we want this to do my random walk. I want it to be putting out DC and getting in trouble that way. Because that will show me what's going on. Okay. This is acting very much like my random noise generation is not providing the random walk that I thought that it was going to do. It's acting like we are outputting noise, yes. We are adding FPD, but it's not really giving a random walk. So let's do something weirder. Let's do multiple stages. And by that, what I mean is this needs to start wandering. Polarity will drive some of this. So we should have a threshold crosser. That should be checking on this. We may be just fine. I'm trying to figure out how this is going to work. We can put this back later. Oh wait, no, we can't undo that. Do we have this not? No, it's simply not giving me the random that I need. So what we're going to do is no, let's go back to that. We'll have two stages of noise. Kind of like in Surge, you have multiple stages of compression. We can even call them noise A and noise B. And now we need to have this be relative to what's going on. Oh, don't need to do this. This could get freaky. So let's see how this works. So there we are, 2 levels of noise. Let's actually copy this off and then hide it. Hide this. And stick this in where it was. I have no idea whether that's gonna work, but well, let's see what we get. At least we should get something else. Otherwise, everything is totally confused and maybe we're copying the plugin over into a different place by mistake. So this should have broken everything. if I am correct and I've done something correctly with this, this has probably broken everything. That will tell me that I've done something and I'm not missing something on an even deeper level. So we gotta kill the output level immediately. Yep, that's very broken. Interestingly though, that's giving me something. So we obviously need to make it much, much quieter. That ought to do it. Let's build it again and see what this sounds like when it is not clipping. Because I was hearing stuff in there that sounded like it was getting into the zone. It was changing. It was varying things in a characteristic way. Now what do we got? In about 40 minutes or so, I'm going to log off for the day, but I'll be back again tomorrow. Oh, we are getting a DC in here. Watch this. Let's see what that looked like. Oh, or are we? No, it's the DC. It's just oscillating. We're getting some kind of funky effect going on here. So we don't want this. Don't save that. So now let's see what we can get to make that act differently. So when we zero cross, noise A is being modulated. Or actually, noise A is not even being modulated at all. Noise A is random, so it's getting added when the polarity is, and then it's getting subtracted when the polarity is something else. And then noise B is based on flip. So that's going to be steadily increasing as noise A increases, which is not necessarily what we want. So here's something we can do right now. Let's just use noise A directly and see what kind of level we're at and whether we have an issue of it never being other than DC offset. It might just wander off in the wrong direction. And there's no real centering force here. Let's find out what this does. Because what we had before, not so much. Oh, we haven't quit. Quit. Now where are we getting? if we play this, interesting, okay. Hello. I think what this might mean is that our pseudo-random is not as pseudo-random as we think. So let's look at what we had. That is a continuous blast, all right. And it seems to be picking sides here. We've got noise, and it is just oscillating around here. Our randomness is confined within this range of whether it's actually in the zero cross or not. But then it's not really doing a random walk as much as I would have thought. Instead, it's just focusing in. I assume if we have a high frequency sound, it's going to be doing that crossing a lot more frequently. Well, let's get rid of that for now. And maybe this is time to start multiplying things by input sample. Now what have we got? I'm a little puzzled as to why noise A is swapping polarity. We're modulating a flip, but we're not doing anything with it. Well, let's just try this. Now, what does it sound like when we're multiplying it by the loudness of the actual samples involved? We can hear the notes. While we're at it, let's do the other thing. So what we're going to do is drag stuff out of the guts of console. But bus first. Ooh, but we don't necessarily want this version. Let's do a purist console. That's a little more complicated than it needs to be. Simplest possible version, purist console bus. So, we make input sample be greatly expanded. We're going to multiply noise by that. And then back into, I think that's going to give us a, well, no, we can't necessarily know whether noise is going to behave. Then back over to Paris console channel, where we do the opposite. Oh, and since in fact it is fine, sine is not in danger of breaking, arc sine is. And then we signed that, and we should have something that's a little bit more like Silhouette, because that's the trick that made Silhouette do the thing that it did, although we still have a concern in that we have that funny behavior, which I'm not entirely happy with. But let's see what we've got for starters. At least we're getting some sounds. We're getting a noise that might be tolerably useful. And we should probably be referencing this to, well, let me first things first. Let's see what we've got here. Because what we're going to try to do is produce a noise that is sounding like Alien Kittens while not being one. And we don't really want that hum. We don't really want the notes coming out that clearly. So here we go. Now let's make it so that it's modulating those bursts of noise in some kind of way. As we're starting to get, like the slight thumpiness here is what I'm looking for. In fact, let's fool with it again. I'm pretty sure that arc sine isn't going to give us a blow up unless the input is too high. It's always going to make things smaller, so what happens if we run this twice? We're about to find out. Oh. How about you not do that? There we go. Oh, already opened that. What am I doing? It's about time to turn in for the day, but this is proving to be an interesting process. Oh, it's Nan. It broke. Let's see whether we need to do this again. In theory, we should be able to do this and get some kind of result. Can we? Well, no, it was a NAND, so it wasn't near 0. It was actually something busted and wrong. What do we got here? Do we need to just unroll that again? Like go back? Minus 151. Okay. So it's all kind of buzz, but the slight punchiness I'm getting here is kind of what I'm shooting for. So the next question is, what happens if we don't sign that? And also I need to track slew, so but we're not going to use that just yet because we also have something else to do. So this goes right at the bottom. Oh, we're going to want our last noise. We could use noise B for that, though. Hang on. We're going to use something fairly similar to this. They will both be handling the volume level the same way. Sometimes you assign things near where you're using them, so very little difference means slew is small. Large difference means slew is large. Slew is high frequency stuff. So our biggest amount of slew, oh wait, here's something I can also do. And since that's going to be around a +1, We'll dial it down to 0.5. We could also put that on one of our sliders, but I'll worry about that later. And so noise A is the bright one and noise B is the previous one. And averaging between those two will make it darker. So if there is a big change, we're going to want it to be more noise A. And, oh no, I got that backwards, don't I? So no change, and noise A is 1. Maximum change, it becomes more like both of them. Let's see what we've got. We've just attempted to add slew to the equation at the very last moment, and we may need to come back again tomorrow for actually doing more with this, but where did we get? Ooh, big thumps. That's arguably too big of a thump. So quick change at the last moment. We are going to assign noise A. And we can combine these into one. And now that we've got that, we've got something where it's darkening if we don't have slew happening, and brightening if we have a lot of slew happening. And while we're at it, let's just param 7. Which is going to be limited to, let's see what we get. And before I go away from here for today, because it's getting time for me to, I need to go and use the facilities. But what did we make out of these? Zoom out. Funnily enough, what does it mean by unused? Oh, I get it. We're not using that anymore. That's why it means unused. We just went past it. Here is our Texturize. And here we are going to run this. And one more little burst of alien kittens. What do we got? So we got a bursty noise thing that probably acts kind of like, well, I think there's stuff that I could still do with it. I can get back to that tomorrow. But the matte thing is taking something that's dry and putting a tiny amount of this, only not like this, in there. There's stuff that I can see to do with this. So you'd be kind of dialing in the level of the hiss on some of that stuff. So what I need to do is get it so that if we've got bass content going, it's softening it down even more. And that's where this needs to go. And we'll get back to that tomorrow. For now, we'll bounce into this. And we'll write what needed to happen. Some of it's a little chaotic, but yeah. And we're going to call that a day. Alrighty, folks. Thanks for hanging with me during this little session. We'll see if we can do some more of it tomorrow. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.